First off, going into conference play, coming off your first loss this season, the home loss, were you, I won't say curious, but just how you guys would respond after your first defeat of the season?
Well, we were obviously extremely disappointed in the home loss to Concordia. Simply, I mean, to be honest with you, I thought we played better against Concordia than we had the prior week when we were in Washington. Obviously, we dug ourselves a huge hole in that Concordia game. But to see the team really fight back and put ourselves in a position to win it, you know, those type of losses kind of sting a little bit more. So saw a lot of sad faces in the locker room after the game, which was a good thing also because the girls were definitely invested. And so to go from that loss, you know, into quick turnaround and starting conference play, I thought the team really responded well. We had a couple good practices after the Concordia game, and then we hit the road for Thanksgiving and for our conference opener, and fortunately we came out with a win.
Before we get to Sonoma, about the Concordia game, they were a team, especially after the first quarter, first half, that, you know, they had some dominance and big size team when it comes to height. What are the adjustments that you made that kind of change things? Sure, you didn't win the game, but you know, make it close.
Yeah. Well, it was a combination of two things. One, we just had a really poor start, and I put it on the defensive end. We just didn't make Concordia go out of what they wanted to do. We did not make them uncomfortable at all, especially early on in the game in the half-court defense, which was a major problem. And so we gave them a lot of hope and we gave them a lot of confidence, and we've talked a great deal about just how we start ball games. So that was part of it. And then we were just sloppy on the offensive end, some careless turnovers, so obviously that's a bad combination. But I remember at one point in the first quarter just turning to the bench and saying, we're fine, we just need a string of stops. We just need a string of defensive stops. And I really believe that once our defense got going that we would be okay. Now certainly we need to start off better.
So, you know, you guys come back, you guys get the victory at Sonoma, get the win, very nice to start conference play. I know you expect a lot more out of your team, but what are aside from the win, what are the positives that came out of that first conference game?
Right, quite different than the Concordia game, which has been interesting of the 4 games we've played so far, which I as a coach I think is a good thing. We've had a lot of different scenarios, whether we've been behind in the ball game and we've had to fight back, or whether we've gained the lead and had to maintain the lead, which is something that we experienced at Sonoma State. I believe we jumped out to a 12-point lead, and they gained the momentum at the end of the second quarter and went into halftime with a little bit of momentum, and then they really punched us first in the third quarter and they went off to an 8-0 run. So having the lead, how to maintain that, how to come out of the third quarter, which we talked about yesterday, again, just starts of games, starts of quarters, how we come out of timeouts, those are very critical moments. And so again, just a game of runs, but what I was proud of was, even though we did lose our lead at Sonoma State, we did keep our composure, and I thought we stayed confident, and we ended up gaining the lead. And obviously Maddie Hatch was a huge part of that, as she really got going for us, hitting shots from the outside.
Hitting shots will definitely make things a lot easier, but aside from that, what has this Jacks team shown so far? They kind of having the ability to battle back, to make changes, and just kind of, stick with it and not say, kind of give up and to say it. But what has your team showed from that aspect?
Right. Well, we're certainly never going to be a team that ever has the mindset of giving up. But one thing that I've talked to the team about since the Sonoma State game is that same fight and grit that we showed in the Concordia game. We need to show that whether we're behind or we're winning. And I didn't see that necessarily consistently in the Sonoma State game once we gained the lead. And that's something that we just have to maintain for 40 minutes. It's a mindset. As I say, it's a killer instinct. When we have a 10, 12-point lead, we have to step on the gas pedal even harder and try to extend that to a 15, 17-point lead, so to speak. And so that's something, each game we're learning something different, and that's something certainly that we took from the Sonoma State game.
What are your thoughts, before we talk about this weekend, what are your thoughts on looking at the league, so far? I know I was looking last week, and I think I'm forgetting, maybe I should just be quiet. Might have been a minute, but some teams that, I guess there are some eye-openers and just how, things have started in conference. But is there anything that you saw out there that kind of tells you? I mean, it's going to be a competitive conference, but things that caught your eye after, a week or so of conference.
I'm not sure if there was really any surprises. San Diego's got some good regional wins on the road, but to be honest, that's not a surprise. They're a very good, solid team. Pomona has started off well. San Marcos has started off well. Chico. So, as I've expressed to the team, especially the new players, just so they have an understanding, there's so much parity in our conference, and I really do believe it's a type of conference that you need to show up every night. I mean, I don't look at our conference schedule and go, okay, here's a win, or, it's every game. And that's why every week when I'm saying, this is a tough week, it's going to be that way for the duration of the season. We just got to show up every single game.
You hit the road this week, San Marcos, a team you kind of just briefly talked about, but what have you seen from them so far?
Yeah, they've started off the season strong. I believe they're 4-1 right now. Just came off a road win open-up conference against East Bay. They have a lot of new personnel on the team. Their style is a little bit different this year, just due to their personnel, and it's something that we're obviously going to work on the next couple days in practice and put our game preparation together. But as I always say, whether it be San Marcos and their style of play, or San Bernardino, or whomever you have it, there's just certain things, like yesterday's practice, we just solely focused on ourselves. There's just things that we're still a little bit a step behind, in my opinion, on being as efficient as we need to be, as consistent as we need to be on the defensive end.
Those Southern California road trips for conference, for the trips of the season, along with distance, how difficult, it seems like every road trip, but just getting there, but everything else, but the San Marcos, San Bernardino, how difficult would you say is this road trip coming up for you guys?
Well, as you mentioned, they're all tough, and definitely one change this year with our conference is no longer playing Friday, Saturday back-to-backs. Now we're playing Thursday, Saturdays, which is nice from a basketball standpoint. Obviously, we get a full day on Friday to prepare for Saturday's opponent, where we haven't had that in the past. It does mean we're leaving campus a day earlier, so we're leaving first thing tomorrow morning. So this span here has been a little bit tough on the academic side, because we've traveled for 3 weeks in a row now. Fortunately, 1 week was Thanksgiving. So just trying to keep the girls focused, really taking care of their classes these couple days here this week. And when we come back from this road trip, now we're home until finals, which is really going to benefit the girls as far as preparing for their studies.
Yeah, especially for you guys when you have to make those long trips. And now playing on Thursday and Saturday, you can prepare on that Friday for that Saturday game, where it's not just you come off a Friday night game and, oh, by the way, you
Right.
got another one. Is this something you feel like maybe from the conference teams from the north, maybe, finding the conferences, listening and trying to kind of hopefully make this a little more evenly? What do you think kind of got it changed?
Well, I think it was just constant communication from the coaches. Obviously different things come into play when you make decisions like this, whether it be the safety of the athletes, whether it be academics, budgetary reasons. There's a number of different things that come into play. But I think we're one of the few conferences in the country up until last year that we're playing still back-to-back games. And so I think this is going to benefit everybody, including the athletes. I mean, that's tough on all the athletes to come back-to-back. And so I do think it's going to benefit everybody. I certainly think it's a positive change from the coach's standpoint for a number of different reasons. So we're excited about it.
You guys got a new member to the team. Can you talk a little bit about that? A little local flavor.
Yes, Chloe Tripp. Chloe, who went to McKinleyville High School here locally, and then she went away to a junior college and played actually volleyball. And she's back on campus here, and it's something that we met with her, and she's been practicing with us now for a couple weeks, and just getting adjusted and getting acclimated to everything and learning the system. And I will say I give Chloe a ton of credit. She's been like a sponge. It is a lot of information. I know it's been really overwhelming to her, but she's like a sponge. She's just taking the information in, and she's slowly getting better and better each practice.
What do you expect out of her? Like you just said, she's kind of but what do you expect from her? What will she add to this team?
Well, I just mentioned this to her the other day, actually, is really what we want to see from her initially is just her being a positive contribution from a defensive standpoint, a rebounding standpoint. The offense, I feel like, will come, and that's just something she's going to get more comfortable with, but just getting her consistent. And our defensive scheme is so incredibly different than she's ever played before, let alone not in the last 3 years. So again, it's just each practice she's getting better and better, but that's what we need to see from her is just consistency on the defensive end and really being on the boards and being a reliable rebounder.
For you guys especially, so isolated recruiting, it's difficult, and To get players to come here. Throw were one of those players that you got. Kind of talk about what you saw in her and why did you want her to be a member of this Jacks program?
Well, when I saw her, she's originally from Vegas, Las Vegas, and she went to Grace Harbor Community College in Washington, and watched her numerous times while she was at Grace Harbor. And obviously she comes in with just a bounce to her. She's explosive, she's athletic, she's engaged, she has a high positive spirit, so that there's so many different things outside of just her God-given talents and her skill. And so those things really caught my attention. And then when we brought her onto campus for a visit, we really felt that Lexi was someone who was going to fit into our team, fit into what we were, buying into what we're trying to do, building off of last year, and that she was just going to be a good fit in all areas. And she's been just that. And again, as I keep saying with Lexi and all the new players, it's, just the expectations are so much different for Lex. She came from a program, which oftentimes new players do, whether they be high school or junior college, where just not as much structure, just not as much expectations. The intensity is much lower. So, Lex and I have talked about this, how, she's like, Coach, this is just all so new. I've just never had to do this and at this expectation every single day. But she's adapting. I think the first month or so was a little bit tough, but she's getting better and better. And again, just like I said about Chloe, she's learning the system and learning the importance of small detailed things on the defensive end. I would say right now is where Lexi's at, and she's making great strides.
All right, anything else you'd like to add?
As we sit here and obviously getting ready for this road trip, again, these are two big games for us. San Marcos is always very, very tough at home, and the way we do things, we just focus on our first opponents, so we're not even talking about San Bernardino yet. But we just need to have two really good practices this afternoon and then early tomorrow morning before we fly out. So